Today we are diving into the book Make Your Bed by Admiral William H. McRaven, a powerful guide that shows how small habits can create life-changing results. But before we begin, let me ask you this. How many times have you woken up feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or stuck in the same routine? You want to change your life, but comparison, procrastination, or fear keeps pulling you back. The truth is, success doesn't come from one big breakthrough. It comes from simple, daily choices like making your bed, refusing to quit, daring greatly, and giving hope to others. And in this summary, you'll discover the exact lessons Admiral McRaven learned as a Navy SEAL, lessons that will teach you how to build discipline, face failure, take risks, and develop the courage to stand tall no matter what life throws at you. So if you want practical tools to transform your mindset and unlock your true potential, stay with me until the end of this summary, because the secret to changing your world, and maybe even the world around you, starts right here.
Chapter 1. Start your day with a task completed. It may sound almost too simple, but one of the most powerful ways to begin your day is by making your bed. At first glance, it feels like a small, almost meaningless task, yet there is a surprising depth of wisdom behind it. When you fold your sheets neatly each morning, you are not just tidying up, you are setting the tone for the entire day. That one act gives you a small but real sense of accomplishment, a feeling that you have already achieved something before the day has even begun. And that tiny spark of success fuels confidence, discipline, and momentum. Admiral William McRaven learned this lesson early in SEAL training in California, on the edge of the Pacific Ocean. Every single day began the same way. The bed had to be made perfectly. The routine was strict. First, the bottom sheet stretched tight across the mattress. Then, the top sheet layered smoothly. The blanket folded into a crisp rectangle at the foot of the bed. Inspectors would come by to examine each one. The standard was so precise that instructors would toss a coin onto the bed. If the coin bounced back cleanly into their hand, the bed was made correctly. If not, the punishment was swift and unpleasant. The trainee was sent running to the beach, ordered to dive into the cold surf, and then roll in the sand until his entire body was covered from head to toe. This was known as becoming a sugar cookie. It was uncomfortable, humiliating, and exhausting, and it taught every trainee to take the smallest details seriously. For McRaven, the lesson was clear. Success doesn't begin with heroic leaps. It begins with discipline in the smallest acts. Making your bed each morning may not seem like much, but it creates a foundation. It reminds you that if you can't handle something so simple, how will you ever rise to the greater challenges life throws at you? Even after his military career ended, McRaven carried this habit with him. It became a daily anchor, a ritual that reminded him of order, control, and fresh beginnings. Every day, it was a message to himself: start strong and the rest will follow. And so the question comes to you. If you want to change your life, why not begin with this? Start your day with a task completed. Start with making your bed. Chapter 2. You can't do it alone. One of the greatest truths in life is this: no one succeeds alone. No matter how strong, talented, or determined we may be, we all need someone to lean on. A partner, a friend, a family member, someone who believes in us when our strength fades, someone who pushes us forward when we feel like giving up. Admiral McRaven learned this lesson early in SEAL training. In the very first phase, he and his team were assigned rubber boats and ordered to paddle across long stretches of water. Every man had to give his best, otherwise the boat would never reach its destination in time. But on one particular day, McRaven was sick, too weak to keep up with the others. He thought he might let his team down. That's when his boat crew stepped in. Without a word, one of his teammates picked up the slack and paddled for both of them. The boat still made it to shore because no one was left behind. That moment seared the value of teamwork into his mind. Later in his career, McRaven faced an even greater trial. After leaping from an aircraft at 5,500 feet, he was badly injured. His body was broken in several places, and his dream of being a SEAL suddenly seemed over. For a time, he lost hope. He wondered if he would ever walk normally again, let alone return to training. Yet, in that dark season, he discovered the strength that comes not from within, but from others. His friends, his teammates, and above all, his wife stood by him. They reminded him of who he was and what he was capable of. They refused to let him quit on himself. That encouragement became his lifeline. Slowly, through pain and perseverance, he healed, and he returned to the path he thought was lost forever. Without the love and belief of others, that comeback might never have happened. And so, the lesson extends far beyond the battlefield. In our daily lives, it is the people we surround ourselves with who give us the courage to keep going. A kind word, a reassuring presence, or even a simple, "I'm here for you," can carry us through the hardest storms. We may each fight our own battles, but we don't have to fight them alone. So cherish the people who stand by you. Never underestimate their importance. Never take them for granted, because in the end, it is our companions, our friends, our families, our partners who give meaning to the journey and strength to the fight.
Chapter 3. Only the size of your heart matters. In life, we often hear people say, "I'm too short," or "I'm overweight," or "I don't look the part." Many of us struggle with the idea that our appearance somehow defines our worth. But the truth is, greatness has nothing to do with height, weight, or looks. What defines you is the size of your heart, the courage you carry, the determination that refuses to quit, the will to push forward even when the odds seem impossible. Admiral McRaven recalls one unforgettable morning on Coronado Beach during SEAL training. The waves that day rose nearly 8 feet high, crashing violently onto the shore. Even the strongest swimmers felt a surge of fear at the sight. Among the group was a new recruit, a young man who stood barely 5'4" tall. The instructor eyed him skeptically and said, half mocking, "These waves are higher than you are. Maybe you should step back." But the young man didn't flinch. He looked the instructor in the eye and said firmly, "I know, I can do this." The instructor leaned closer and whispered something only he could hear. Without hesitation, the young man sprinted toward the roaring ocean and dove straight into the surf. Later, when he emerged, McRaven asked him what the instructor had said. The boy smiled and answered, "He told me, prove me wrong." And that's exactly what he did. His heart was taller than the waves. McRaven also remembers meeting a man named Tom Norris, whose unassuming presence fooled many. Tom was short, dressed like an ordinary civilian, and didn't look like the typical tough Navy SEAL. At first glance, McRaven thought he was just a trainee still finding his way. But to his surprise, the instructor introduced Tom as one of the most decorated SEALs in history, a Medal of Honor recipient who had carried out daring rescues and fought with extraordinary bravery in Vietnam. McRaven was stunned. How could he have judged such a remarkable man by appearance alone? These stories drove home a powerful truth. The world will always try to measure you by what it can see, your size, your face, your background. But none of that matters. What matters is invisible. The size of your heart, the strength of your spirit, the courage to face fear head-on. So the next time you doubt yourself because of how you look or how others see you, remember this: your body does not define your destiny. Your heart does. And with enough courage, you can rise above any wave. Chapter 4. Life is not fair. Drive on. Life has a way of testing us. No matter who we are, sooner or later we face hardships we never asked for and never imagined. Some of these challenges feel so unfair that we are tempted to give up or drown ourselves in self-pity. But the truth is, feeling sorry for yourself changes nothing. What matters is how you respond, whether you let life break you or whether you stand up, dust yourself off, and drive on. Admiral McRaven shares the story of one of his instructors, Moki Martin. Martin was a gifted athlete, strong and disciplined, with a passion for riding his bike. He loved pushing himself to speeds of 30 miles per hour. But one day while riding, he looked down instead of ahead and collided head-on with another cyclist. The crash was devastating. Moki was rushed to the hospital, his legs badly injured. The doctors assured him that in time he would recover. But recovery never came. His legs were paralyzed, and he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. For many people, such a blow would have meant the end of their spirit. But not for Moki Martin. He never gave in to bitterness, and he never allowed self-pity to define him. Instead, he chose to keep moving forward in the ways he could. He discovered a love for painting, poured his energy into it, and in time became a talented artist. What began as tragedy gave birth to creativity. What seemed like the end opened the door to a new beginning. That was the lesson his life taught. Unfairness is inevitable, but defeat is optional. None of us can control everything that happens to us. Accidents, illness, loss, disappointment, they come to us all. But what we can control is our response. Do we blame, complain, and stay stuck? Or do we accept reality with courage and find a way to grow through it? McRaven reminds us that the road of life will never be perfectly smooth. You will stumble, you will fall, and sometimes the ground beneath you will feel impossibly heavy. But when that moment comes, remember Moki Martin. Remember that even in the face of loss, there can be new gifts waiting to be discovered. Life is not fair. It never will be. But if you refuse to quit, if you choose to drive on, you will find strength you never knew you had. And you may even discover parts of yourself that only hardship could reveal.
Chapter 5. Failure can make you stronger. Admiral McRaven remembers this lesson vividly from SEAL training. Every day, the trainees were ordered into the ocean for long swims. Each man was paired with a swim buddy, so no one would be left alone in dangerous waters. There was always a strict time limit, and anyone who finished late was punished. One day, McRaven and his partner were the last to return from a deep dive. Their punishment was harsh: endless squats, push-ups, and extra drills. To make matters worse, if you failed once, your name was added to a dreaded list and the punishments doubled the next day. Many trainees broke under the weight of these failures and dropped out altogether. But McRaven and his partner decided to use their punishment as practice. With each failure came more training, and with more training came strength. What once felt like humiliation eventually became their edge. Before long, the two men went from finishing last to finishing first. What had begun as failure had turned into mastery. Later in his career, McRaven faced another kind of failure, one that cut even deeper. During a Navy SEAL operation, he was relieved of his command for altering the mission plan. It was a humiliating moment, and it would have been easy to walk away. But McRaven chose a different path. Instead of letting the failure define him, he redoubled his efforts, pouring himself into every assignment with renewed determination. Slowly, he regained respect, rebuilt trust, and ultimately earned the honor of commanding his own SEAL team. These experiences taught him, and now teach us, that failure is not a curse. It is a teacher, a motivator, a forge that strengthens the steel of our character. The true test of a leader, and indeed of any person, is not whether they fail, but how they respond to failure. Do they let it break them, or do they use it as fuel to rise higher? So the next time you stumble, remember this: failure is not final. It is simply the path, clearing the way for your greatest success. Chapter 6. You must dare greatly. Most people spend their lives avoiding risk. We cling to comfort, afraid of failure, afraid of loss, afraid of what might happen if things go wrong. But history has always shown that the true winners are the ones who dare. Risk-takers are the ones who discover new worlds, who build great companies, who rescue lives, who inspire change. Without risk, there is no growth. Without daring, there is no greatness. Admiral McRaven learned this truth on a dusty obstacle course during SEAL training. One of the toughest challenges was the rope slide, a terrifying stretch that began with a 30-foot tower. From the top, a single rope stretched down to a pole on the ground 100 feet away. The goal was to cross as quickly as possible. McRaven first attempted it cautiously, inching his way across the rope with the safest technique he knew. He made it to the other side, but he was painfully slow, far behind the standard. Then, an experienced instructor told him something that stuck. If you want to succeed, you must take a risk. The instructor described a far riskier technique, one that involved flipping upside down and sliding head-first down the rope. It was faster, but far more dangerous. For days, McRaven hesitated, held back by fear. Finally, 1 week later, he pushed fear aside. He climbed the tower, flipped upside down, and flew across the rope. In just seconds, he reached the finish line faster than he ever imagined possible. The lesson was seared into his memory. Sometimes the only way forward is to dare greatly. That lesson was tested again years later, far away from training grounds, in the middle of the Iraq War. McRaven and his team were given a mission to rescue 3 hostages from a small compound. The situation was desperate. If they moved too slowly, the hostages would be relocated or executed. Time was running out. The safest plan was to wait until nightfall, but waiting meant risking the lives of the hostages. The only real option was also the most dangerous: launching an assault in daylight. The plan was bold. 3 helicopters swooping in, teams storming the building under the full glare of the sun. Every second carried the risk of enemy fire. Every corner could have spelled disaster. And yet, because they dared, the mission succeeded. The hostages were rescued, the team survived, and the risk became a victory. From training fields to battlefields, the lesson was always the same. If you never take risks, you will never know your true potential. Playing safe may protect you from pain, but it will also keep you from greatness. To live fully, to achieve deeply, you must dare greatly.
Chapter 7. Stand up to the bullies. At some point in life, we all encounter bullies. They might be classmates in school, colleagues at work, or even people in positions of great power. Bullies thrive on fear. They want to see you shrink, to watch you doubt yourself. The more frightened you become, the stronger they feel. But here's the truth. Running away never stops a bully. The only way to silence them is to stand tall and refuse to give them power. Admiral McRaven saw this lesson in one of the most unforgettable encounters of his life when he came face to face with Saddam Hussein. Once the ruthless ruler of Iraq, Saddam had ordered the deaths of thousands of innocent people. He ruled through terror, crushing anyone who opposed him. Even after his capture, when McRaven visited the prison where Saddam was held, he noticed something chilling. Saddam sat in his cell, smiling with cold confidence, his eyes showing no shame, no regret, only the same intimidating arrogance he had always carried. But McRaven knew that fear only grows when you feed it, so he chose not to treat Saddam as a larger-than-life tyrant, but as what he truly was, a prisoner. Day after day, McRaven walked past his cell, never engaging, never giving him attention. To him, Saddam was simply another man in confinement. Slowly, even the guards and other prisoners began to see him not as a terrifying dictator, but as just another fallen figure. His power to intimidate began to dissolve. And that's the lesson. Bullies only remain powerful if you let them. When you react with fear, when you treat them as untouchable, their confidence swells. But when you stand firm, when you strip away the importance they crave, their strength begins to crumble. In the end, Saddam Hussein faced justice. He was executed for his countless crimes. But long before that day, his aura of invincibility had already been broken simply because people stopped bowing to his shadow. So, in your own life, when you meet those who try to belittle you or dominate you, remember this: never run. Never give them the satisfaction of your fear. Stand tall, look them in the eye, and know that courage is the one thing every bully cannot withstand. Chapter 8. Give people hope. Hope is one of the most powerful forces in the human spirit. It has the ability to lift people out of despair, to give strength when bodies are weak, and to light a path when the world feels dark. Sometimes, all it takes is one voice, one act of courage to spark that flame of hope in others. Admiral McRaven witnessed this truth during one of the toughest parts of SEAL training, known as Hell Week. For 6 relentless days, trainees are pushed to their breaking point. There is no rest, no sleep, only endless running, swimming, and grueling exercises designed to weed out the weak. Among the hardest moments is the infamous mudflat exercise. Imagine freezing winter nights, your body soaked and heavy with mud, so thick you can barely move. Hours turn into an eternity as the cold bites deeper. Instructors would tempt the men with an offer. Anyone could quit and walk away for hot coffee and warm soup. The deal was simple: leave the mud, leave the suffering. And every man knew that if even one person quit, others might follow. One night, when exhaustion and despair nearly broke the group, a trainee began to stand up, ready to leave. But before he could, another voice rose from the darkness. One trainee began to sing. His song cut through the cold air, shaky at first, but brave. Then another voice joined him, and then another. Soon, the whole group was singing together, defying the misery, reminding each other that they were not alone. They endured because one man gave them hope, and that hope spread like fire through the mud and darkness. Years later, McRaven would see this same power of hope outside the battlefield. During a mission in Afghanistan, tragedy struck when 38 men were killed in an aircraft. At the Air Force Base, grieving families gathered to say goodbye. The weight of sorrow was unbearable, and yet among them stood Lieutenant John Kelly. He too had lost his own son in service, but instead of withdrawing into grief, he moved from family to family, offering comfort, speaking words of strength, reminding them that their loved ones had not died in vain. That day, McRaven realized that giving hope is perhaps the greatest gift one human being can offer another. It doesn't erase pain, but it gives people the courage to endure it. It doesn't erase loss, but it helps the heart believe in tomorrow. Hope can turn despair into resilience, weakness into courage, and silence into song. So never underestimate your ability to give hope. A single word, a single smile, or a single act of courage can inspire others to keep moving forward. Sometimes, hope is all we need to survive the darkest night. And it may be you who lights that flame.
Chapter 9. Never, ever quit. Life has a way of pushing us to the edge. There will be days when you feel overwhelmed, when the obstacles seem too heavy to carry, when giving up feels easier than holding on. In those moments, it is not skill or talent that keeps you alive. It is the stubborn courage to persevere. Quitting may bring temporary relief, but it leaves behind a lifetime of regret. From the very first day of SEAL training, Admiral McRaven and his classmates were confronted with this truth. Standing before 150 eager young men, the instructor pointed to a brass bell hanging nearby. He explained the rules. If anyone wanted to quit, all they had to do was ring the bell. No more freezing water, no more endless runs, no more exhaustion. One ring and the pain would end. But then came the warning. If you quit, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Because giving up never makes life easier. 6 months later, only 33 men remained. The rest had rung the bell and walked away. McRaven was among those who endured, not because it was easy, but because he refused to quit. Years later in Afghanistan, McRaven saw the same spirit in a young soldier named Adam Bates.
Just 19 years old, Adam had been in the country for barely a week when tragedy struck. He was gravely injured on his very first mission and lay in a hospital bed fighting for his life. McRaven visited him, unsure of what to say, when a nurse handed Adam a slip of paper covered with symbols in sign language. Adam's mother was deaf, so he understood it perfectly. With effort, he made a gesture to McRaven. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." Then he closed his eyes and drifted to sleep. A year later, McRaven saw Adam again. This time, he stood proudly in uniform, balanced on prosthetic legs. He had lost both of his real legs in that mission, but he had not lost his spirit. Many would have been broken, but Adam chose a different path. He did not complain. He did not surrender. He simply carried on with courage and dignity. That is the essence of resilience. Life will break your body, test your faith, and tempt you to surrender. But the choice is always yours. Will you ring the bell, or will you keep moving forward? McRaven's lesson and Adam's example remind us that no matter how impossible the odds, no matter how painful the road, never, ever quit. Because if you refuse to quit, you are already a survivor, and eventually you will become a victor. As we reach the end of this book, one message stands above all others. It is the small things that shape a great life. Success is not built overnight, nor is it the result of one grand gesture. It grows out of simple daily acts: courage, discipline, perseverance, and the will to keep going when life gets hard. You've learned that making your bed each morning is not about the sheets or the blanket. It is about beginning the day with a victory, however small. That one act builds confidence, creates momentum, and reminds you that discipline in little things leads to mastery in greater things. You've also seen the power of people, friends, teammates, and loved ones. No one succeeds alone. We rise because others push us, support us, and walk with us when we stumble. Treasure them, lean on them, and when the time comes, be that source of strength for someone else. You've discovered that life is not fair, and it never will be. You will face injustice, loss, and setbacks. But you also learned that it's not unfairness that defines you, but your response to it. Drive on. Stand tall. Refuse to let bitterness steal your strength. You've been reminded that failure is not an ending, but a teacher. Every mistake, every fall is a lesson that can make you faster, stronger, wiser. You've seen that risks must be taken, bullies must be faced, and hope must be shared, even in the darkest of nights. And above all, you've learned the greatest lesson of them all. Never, ever quit. Life will test you again and again. It will knock you down, leave you weary, and tempt you to surrender. But if you rise each time, if you face your fears, if you dare greatly and refuse to quit, you will not just survive, you will become a thrive. So let this book be more than a collection of stories. Let it be a call to action. Start with small steps. Build courage in your heart. Stand up when you're tested, and day by day, you will not only change your own life, you might just change the world.